The Suicide Monologues present the testimonies of people who have been affected by suicide and attempted suicide. The monologues are voiced by a range of actors. Please note that some viewers may find these films distressing.
Dear Catherine, I hope you don't mind me writing this letter. A bizarre set of events happened where I met someone at a party who knew you. Someone had been talking about a book in which a woman throws herself off a building in Sheffield and survives. Well, I put two and two together and I knew that it had to be you. The person at the party gave me your contact details, so I hope that you don't mind me writing to you, and I hope it's not too much of a shock. It was a delightful surprise to me to see how much you've done with your life and how you've reclaimed your experience by writing about it. You won't know this, but I was the first person on the scene. I tried to save you. I saw you falling from the building and instinctively I threw down my bag and I ran towards you. It's weird because it was the one and only time that I've ever parked at Rockingham Street car park. The day before, I'd had this pass that's normally reserved only for senior members of staff. I'm usually parking at Granville Road, and if that had been the case, I'd have taken my usual walk to work, and I would never have been part of this story. Your story. I tried to keep you breathing until the ambulance came, and I stroked your hair so that you would know that somebody was with you. Of course, you won't remember this. The police told me to prepare a report for coroner's court because the state that you were in, nobody expected you to survive. When the ambulance people took you away, after that, I didn't hear anything, so I assumed the worst. Well, Catherine, I suppose you really weren't meant to die. And things happen for a reason. When our two worlds collided that day, something profound happened to me too. I knew that I couldn't go back to my job as a clerical officer for the council. My calling was to be a nurse. So I worked really hard on a mature access course, and I got a place at university, but a life-changing incident happened soon after I started, and I nearly lost my life in a car accident. I had to postpone my course, and I thought that my career was over before it had even started. But I'm strong, like you, and I persevered, and I went back to my course and I graduated with a first-class honours degree. And you might find this difficult to believe, but that was you that inspired me. You taught me never to give up hope. I graduated in 2007 and I became a community nurse, and I love my job so much. So there it is. Things happen for a reason. When we were together in that moment, it was just a crease on the pages of our lives, and there were new chapters ahead in which we touched everybody from there on in. I never really understood about suicide before we shared the event together. I always thought that somebody trying to take their own life was weak. But when I saw you laying there on the concrete, still holding your bag, I knew you weren't weak. I realized that life sometimes throws us difficult things, and it can be too much for one person to bear. And I also realized how fragile life is and how we're all delicate. So, Catherine, I just wanted to say how proud I am of you, and I wanted to thank you for teaching me and for inspiring me. Your friend, James.
What do you expect me to feel after what you've done? I don't know what to think or feel anymore. I feel nothing. I'm numb. I am Olivia. I'm an only child. I'm 14 years old. I'm a child to a single parent. I am someone you didn't want. I feel like an orphan, but I'm not, because you're still here. You're still lying in that bed, still broken and damaged. They came to my school, you know, tried to soften the blow by telling me you'd had an accident and had been hit by a tram. I knew you hadn't, because Laura's mum, who works on A&E, had already texted her while we were in geography class, so she knew before me that you'd thrown yourself under a tram willingly. I came to the hospital to see you and you'd blown up like a balloon. Didn't even recognise you. Didn't know who you were. They told me that you wouldn't know I was there, but I spoke to you anyway and you squeezed my hand. They told me to prepare for the worst and that you probably weren't going to make it through the night. My life fell apart there and then. I fell on the floor and screamed, willing for all the pain to come out of me, but it didn't. It never will. I hate you for this. I hate you. I want you to feel the pain that I feel inside. But I know you're hurting too. I love you, Dad. Please don't die. I want to run away. I want a new life. I don't want everyone to know that I am the child whose only parent tried to leave them. Gran has moved in, I can't stand it. She's moved everything around as if you're already dead. She doesn't want to be here. I don't want her to be here. I want you here, not her. I want to lie in your bed and soak up your smell, but she won't let me. So I lock myself up in my room. School have shoved me in learning base. They say that I'm a distraction and that I'm better off in a more supportive environment. I hate it there, and I hate it here, and I hate you for doing this. At night, I stay out and get so drunk that it melts away all the pain I feel inside, only for it to come back the next day and for the nightmare to start all over again. I hate you. And I love you. I am 14 years old, and you tried to leave me alone in the world.
It was a Sunday, I remember that. But what I remember most about that day is the colour blue. Blue was the colour of her jacket, the jacket that she wore as she stepped in front of my train. It's been a long time since I've been down here to the station. I'm not a train driver anymore. It's affected me badly, you see. It haunts me even though it was 9.5 years ago. Just standing here makes me realise how little I'd been prepared for the impact of witnessing that event was going to have on me. I'll tell you what happened, shall I, now that I can talk about it. After releasing the brakes and opening the throttle, we pulled away from the platform. I guided the train through the countryside under the fading light of evening. I had to concentrate hard on the line ahead as my eyes adjusted to the fading light. Once you reached 70 miles an hour, I closed the throttle and we maintained a good speed towards the next stop. I remember passing over a level crossing. We passed a whistle board. That's a white round sign with a black W which commands a driver to sound the horn, which I did. Just as I'd done that, she stepped out into the path of my train. I knew it was a woman. She held her arms out, a bit like a goalkeeper trying to block the path of an opponent. I lurched forward and I grabbed the brake controller and I pushed it into emergency. The train's coupler slammed into her upper body. It threw her down the embankment. I heard a sickening thud even before I'd fully applied the brakes. She not only bounced off the train, it was like she bounced off me too. I jumped into action. I followed all the correct procedures that I've been trained to follow. I contacted the police, I contacted my control room, and I did all the other things to make the scene safe. I remember my mind being filled with emergency drills, checklists that needed completing, but I felt nothing, not at the time anyway. It was like I'd disconnected. My instinct was to rush to her aid and try and administer some sort of medical assistance. I felt responsible for her. I wanted to bandage her up to help her. But it was obvious that no one would have survived an impact like that. I remember wanting to run as fast as I could, anywhere just to get away from it. I felt guilty, like this was my fault. When I got home, I climbed under the duvet and I kept on replaying the events over and over in my mind like a stuck record. I thought about the police knocking on the door of the woman's family to give them the news. I didn't have feelings, I just felt numb.
Everyone helped to pick me up, but then after a few days the trauma started to set in. I started to slip into a deep depression over the next few weeks. My home felt dark and I couldn't sleep. I stopped answering the phone and answering the door, and I stopped going to work. I shaved my head because I wanted to rid myself of everything that I had on me when the incident happened. 6 months I waited for counselling. I went through a myriad of feelings, from guilt to anger and despair. And then I felt deep concern for the family of the deceased. At the coroner's inquest, I was questioned extensively. The deceased family were also present. I saw her son in the corridor. He said, "I wanted to apologise to you on behalf of my mother. She should never have put you through this ordeal." I shook his hand and tried to reassure him that his pain was greater than mine. I felt a bizarre connection to this stranger. I never knew her before, yet it's someone who I have shared the most vulnerable time in her life, but where I feel connection, he feels abandonment. Where my wounds and pain will fade over time, his will never diminish. It took me a full 6 years to cry for the deceased, Mary, and also for the trauma that I suffered.
My mum died because she was ill. That's what I said at her funeral. I don't know why she became ill, but I know it was the depression that killed her. It wasn't quick, like a heart attack or a stroke. It descended upon her like a cancer, engulfing her, tormenting her for years. It made her life unbearable. Of course, there were times when things were brighter. There often is with mental illness. Times when she didn't look scared. Times she could relax. Precious times. She knew how much we loved her, I know that much. Yet she struggled with the shame and the guilt for all the chaos and pain her illness caused throughout our lives. I don't know why it was that particular Saturday she brought herself here to Redmire's Dam. And I don't know what she must have been thinking to herself as she stood at the water's edge. I don't know what went through her mind as she took her last breath and gave herself up to the icy water. I don't know much at all. Can't find the words to explain. Scared that I never will. My mum died because she was ill. That's what I said at her funeral. She was fully clothed in the water when they found her, yet they never found her bag or her shoes. On the first anniversary of Mum's death, I came here to leave some flowers, but it had been drained. I just wanted to climb over the wall and run out into the mud and try and find her bag and her shoes, but what would that have achieved? She will remain a secret. And soon the water would return, and like other secrets, hers will remain hidden under the calm, dark surface for all eternity. Dad and I sat on the sofa as 3 police officers came into the room. We knew instinctively what the news was, but they still have to tell you. They have to say it out loud for you to hear, for your brain to register, for your heart to crack, for your throat to let out that noise. It's been 13 years since Mum drowned. Despite all the years of mental illness, the depression, schizophrenia, spells in hospital, the previous suicide attempts, her actual death was recorded as an open verdict, not a suicide. Ironically, Mum was a swimmer, just like me. Counting the laps and the strokes allows me to empty my head. Yet in a macabre way, it makes me think about drowning. When I accidentally swallow a mouthful of water, I instinctively cough it back up and pull up for breath. And in that moment, I wonder what it must take to fight that natural impulse to survive, to not keep going, to not keep breathing. Then I carry on swimming. My mum died because she was ill. That's what I said at her funeral.
I lied a lot about what had happened to me in the beginning. It's hard to know what to say to people. It's not like saying I've been in a car accident or I've had cancer. Hi, I'm Catherine, I'm a suicide survivor. People just don't know how to respond to that. They're embarrassed mostly. It's not normal really, is it, suicide? Well, you think it's not normal until you actually find out that 84 people every single week in the UK complete suicide. That's fairly normal, isn't it? My suicide attempt 16 years ago didn't just happen to me though. It happened to everybody I knew, and it happened to loads of people that I didn't know as well. Incidents like that never happen in isolation, and they touch many, many people in the community. I guess it was hard for me to take on board everybody's feelings and thoughts about what had happened to me in the beginning. People were angry and people were upset. I just had enough of a job trying to process what had happened to me, never mind think about everybody else's feelings and thoughts. I was struggling just to get from one end of the room to the other in one piece. That 3-second act of standing on top of that building and letting myself fall seems to have defined who I am to loads of people. I'm no longer Catherine, that amazing person who was a social worker, had a child on my own and managed to get a degree and buy my own house. To some people, I'm that mad woman, that nutter, that mental case, that selfish person, that woman who jumped off a building. People ask me, do I regret what happened? Well, it's a bit more complicated than saying yes. Of course I regret the hurt and the pain that it's caused a lot of people. And of course I regret having to live with this amount of pain every single day. And of course I regret spending so much of the NHS money putting me back together again. But to answer yes is an admission that somehow I was responsible for what actually happened to me, that I chose it almost. Nobody chooses to end their own life. People are pushed into it. People are pushed into it because their stress has outstripped their ability to cope. People are pushed into it because they're mentally ill, or they're really sad or lonely or massively in debt. People don't choose to end their life. Choice is a really difficult word to use. How it looks on the inside is completely different to how it looks on the outside. Choice is the only word that we have. I don't lie about what happened to me anymore. I own my story. This is my story. I like who I am now. It's been a hard story. It's been a hard journey. But it's my journey. And my journey and my story have taught me that there is always hope. There is always hope. I have to talk about this to stop the discrimination towards people like me. That's why I wanted to make this film. That's why it's important to me. I want people to talk about suicide. I want people to be open. That way we might be able to stop it happening to so many people. I am a mother. I am a grandma. I am a partner. I am a friend. I am an employee. I am a disability advocate. I'm a gardener. I'm a writer. I'm a theatre maker. I'm a businesswoman. I'm a survivor. I am a suicide survivor. I am Catherine.